Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to my presentation on the subject of common principles of spirituality in religious traditions, a Kerala example. I'll start sharing my presentation. There it is. Hope you all can see my presentation. My name is Jose Puttanani. I'm a student of the Practical Philosophy Australia School from 2020. So before I begin, I like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. And before I begin, I have big thanks to my guru, Robert Yudovich. He has been my tutor for the last nearly 4 years now, since 2020, and I have learned a lot from him. Such a wise man, his knowledge, his wisdom, his guidance has been an important part that directed me, guided me to put together this presentation and make this presentation. So thank you, Robert. As the Guru Gita says, Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah. It means Guru is Brahma, Guru is Vishnu, Guru is Maheshwara, and the Guru is the self-revealing, limitless Brahman. Salutations to that revered Guru. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for all your guidance in the last nearly 4 years. Not only that, I must thank my fellow students. When I started attending philosophy classes with practical philosophy in 2020, I joined the class. There was a few others with me, and most of us are still in the same class. And it's important that I thank my fellow students because we learned a lot together. As in the Upanishad says, Sahana vavatu, Sahana bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhidamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It means let's stay together, let's eat together, or let us nourish together. Let's share our energies. Let us enlighten each other without hatred, and peace to all. So before I get into the subject itself, a little bit about myself. I was born in Kerala. That's why the Kerala example in the title. I was born in a Syrian Christian family, a Syrian orthodox Christian family. Interestingly, that place happened to be just 30 kilometers away from the birthplace of Shankara, the master of Advaita philosophy, born in the 8th century. After my school and university in Kerala, I went to New Delhi for I lived in New Delhi for about 6 years, then lived in other part of India, then worked in Middle East, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, worked in different parts of India. And then I came to Australia in 2007. And I worked for 4 years in New South Wales, then moved to Brisbane. And since then, I'm living in Brisbane, but in between, I spent about 3 years in Western Australia doing a fly-in, fly-out work. As I said, I was born in a Syrian Orthodox Christian family. I had a very religious life into my early 40s. I have been, as the tradition was, as the practice was, the community, we all used to go to the church every Sunday. I had all the sacraments up to this point. I attended catechism at the church to the year 10. I was an altar boy for 3 years. At the same time, I always had an interest in religion and history for a very long time. I used to read a lot. I used to listen a lot. I used to study a lot. I used to search, inquire in my own way, books and periodicals and videos and newspapers and all. I must say in 2018, I had an awakening, and I thought it's important that I go beyond the boundaries of religions, because the real God, the real essence of spirituality is not in religions. Religions are only pathways. That's where you start, but then to experience the real God, you must go beyond the religions. And interestingly, I have published a few books on philosophy, economics, health, fiction, poetry, and short stories. So getting into the subject of spirituality itself. So what is spirituality? Spirituality, broadly, we could say it is a belief in a divine supernatural power. When I say supernatural, it is beyond the realms of the senses, what you can see and touch and taste and experience with your material body. And the belief is that supernatural is present in us in the form of our spirit or soul or Atman, whatever you call it. That's the presence of that supernatural in us. And in the end, that spirit or that soul or Atman will return to the divine as pure as it arrived, because the belief is when we took birth, we were pure, and during our life we became corrupted. Important that we purify ourselves and go back to that supernatural divine power when we all die. So over centuries, we all have kind of developed this concept that this God or supernatural power is someone like human sitting somewhere else in heaven or somewhere else, and then controlling our lives. So I think that's where it all went wrong. But the real spirituality is different from that person-like power sitting somewhere else. Now coming to the second part of the subject, the Kerala example. So where is Kerala? As you can see in the picture, Kerala is in the southwest corner of India on the coast of Arabian Sea. It's a very tropical weather area. It gets about 9 months of rain in a year. On the west coast means it is pretty humid and a lot of trees and people living living with a lot of water and sea surrounding. If you look at the history of Kerala itself, depending on how much interested you are in history, how much you know about history, you can broadly split the history into different phases. One, of course, the pre-Christian times, where that place used to have trade relations with the Middle East, with Arabia. If you look at the ancient history, the belief is the original Homo sapiens arrived from Africa in the Indian subcontinent about 80,000 BC, about 80,000 years ago, and then they spread across India and they settled in different parts. And also they spread to the east and arrived in Australia about 60,000 years ago. And the archaeological evidence in the area notes to human life, human presence about 6,000 or 8,000 years ago. The area was generally ruled by about three kingdoms up to about 12th century. The Chera, the Chola, and the Pandya, the entire South India, that not just Kerala, but the South India was under the rule of these three different kingdoms. Then in about 14th century, there was a Muslim invasion from the north, and that kind of disrupted all that from in the ruling community. There was disruptions. And there was then afterwards it was kind of coexistence of the local kingdoms and the governors of the Muslims who ruled the north. Then the colonization from the 16th century, the Portuguese arriving in the 15th century, and then the British, and then kind of British conquer of India by the 19th century or late 18th century. And then the British rule for about 150 years, and then the independence 1947. And now what we know about India is the independent India since 1947. And what's interesting is the trade from that area with the Middle East. That place was a very fertile ground for spices, spices and wood, and the people used to make good boards, and those boards used to take the spices into the Middle East. The spices in the Middle East were all carried to Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, Turkey, and Persia, and the people in that area that was haggled and fought for those producers. And in fact, the colonization or the European arrival is all for looking for spices. Coming to the spiritual traditions in that area, the cultural history, the place was always, we can say, the local traditions or the indigenous traditions. We all know the word Hindu now, but the Hindu word is pretty new. It kind of started used by the British because they wanted to collectively all the local traditions into one big basket called Hindu. It is basically the indigenous traditions. The indigenous traditions at the heart was the Shaivism, which is the worship of Shiva and his consort Parvati, or the mother goddess. The mother goddess is none other than the Mother Earth herself. So you see the image in the picture, which is a goddess from a temple in Kerala. And always remember, these images are fairly new because after people started drawing, painting, and presenting images of their gods and goddesses. Before that, there was sculptures in the temples. Even the temples sculptures are only less than 1,000 years old. And before that, it was all small local idols created by people. There was, of course, influence of Buddhism and Jainism for a very long time. The Buddhism must have arrived in Kerala about BC 2nd century. And by about 8th century Christian era, there was the Brahminical Hinduism that arrived. The Hinduism, as we know now, is mostly Brahminical Hinduism. It was all spread all over India from the time of the Gupta Empire, which ruled North India from the 6th century. It's interesting, the Buddhism flourished, Buddhism and Jainism flourished in all over India for a very long time. And it is believed the Buddhist missionary Bodhidharma, who went to China, was originally from Kerala. Christianity, it is believed that Christianity arrived in Kerala in AD 52 and brought by Saint Thomas himself. This is a subject of very intense debate because there's no evidence that Saint Thomas came to Kerala. There's a lot of places in the world where people believe Saint Thomas was there, there are places where relics of someone believed to be of Saint Thomas is kept. But because of the trade connections, someone must have arrived in Kerala after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and they must have influenced the local communities to adopt Christianity. But the big arrival was from the 4th century, where a tribe by name called Thomas of Cana and his tribe arrived. There is again this another subject of debate. Some believe they arrived as early as 4th century. Some believe the arrival was maybe between 4th and 8th century. But that was probably a big arrival of a truly Christian community, and they influenced the locals, and there was conversions, or people started practicing adopting Christianity. What's interesting is at that time, that place was getting spiritual support from Middle East, because the people who arrived were all Middle Eastern, and it was the Middle Eastern version of Christianity that was in practice. So the priests and bishops used to arrive from Middle East, from Syria and Iraq and Persia, and the people who have been kind of that nurture and nourishment was from the priests and bishops coming from Middle East. So what's important to remember that although people have some Christian belief, they all continued the local traditions. Of course, the Shaivism, the Mother Earth, the worship, the Vaishnavism, the Buddhism, Jainism, they all remained in practices. But the places of worship, they all had Jesus Christ at the center as the main God. So Christianity arrived in Kerala with the Portuguese in the 15th century. The Portuguese practice, as we all know, wherever they went, they wanted to enforce the Roman Catholicism and the authority of Pope all over the world. They kind of tried to destroy the local versions of Christianity, and they did the same thing in Kerala. And in the 16th century, it got so worse, and in the 16th century, there was a big divide in the community. One group of people decided to go with the Portuguese and accept the authority of Pope, and another group of Christians decided we are not going to go with the Portuguese anymore. So what you see in the picture is the very historic oath called Coonan Cruz Oath. So what happened was the people who decided not to go with the Portuguese, they gathered around a cross and they tied a rope on the cross, and while holding on to the rope, they all swore oath saying that we are not going to go with the Portuguese. Because of the large number of people holding on to the rope, it is believed the cross bent, and it was called Coonan Cross, or the bent cross oath. But later, it was the influence of the Carmelite missionaries that had a lasting influence. The Carmelite missionaries started hospitals, schools, universities, and did a lot of charity work, supported people, and that charity element attracted a lot of people into Christianity. And that's the colonial times. That's where because of the support from the colonial powers, Christianity flourished in that area mostly, and in many parts of India. So at the same time, there was Islam also arrived. What you see in the picture is a very ancient mosque believed to be constructed in the 7th century. Interestingly, when Prophet Muhammad was alive. Again, these are all, there are arguments. Then some argue it formally became a mosque later, although it was constructed at an early times. Even now we can see many Hindu symbols in the mosque, interestingly. So what are the common practices in worship? Now, we know that all the religion, they have many common elements. That's the subject of this presentation. Of course, the God, the capital G, or when you look at across multiple religions, you can call gods, and then goddesses, or small, minor gods are less powerful than the main god. Then there are the female forms of forms called goddesses, and they all live in heaven or wherever that is. And then there are saints. Saints are humans who were pleased by the gods and goddesses, and finally they were offered eternal life in the heaven. Then there are places of worship. So people gather in places of worship and offer their prayers to the gods and goddesses, and hold their ceremonies in that places of worship. The places of worship can be daily worship, and weekly worships, monthly, annual celebrations. All these vary. Then there are special occasions. These special occasions are special occasions on the astrology occasions of astrological significance, special occasions related to the lives of gods, goddesses, saints. And then there are festivals. That's the time when people all come together and celebrate. Of course, these festivals are related to the special occasions of gods, goddesses, and saints. Then, of course, there are pilgrimages. People go to certain very special places of worship and offer prayers. And each pilgrim center has their own traditions. When you go to a pilgrim center, they have to do certain practices that is believed to be special, and which is expected to give you blessings if you do it in a particular way. And of course, life after death is an important part of all religions. Because, as I said earlier, it's important that we live a spiritual life so that we can return back to the ultimate divine as pure as we arrived on earth. So what's at the core of all these practices? I would summarize those practices into the main three elements. I will call them mantra, yantra, and tantra. We in the school, we are all familiar with the word mantra. That's what we use in our meditations. So mantra, the word means mantra. You can call it mind tool or some way to energize mind. It's a sound or a word or words that is repeated loud or in mind. So the purpose is to silence the mind and then focus on that activity, which way you will be free from the influence of the mind in your spiritual exercise, in your spiritual effort. So this can be chantings. We all know, anyone, as I'm talking to mostly people who are familiar with the Christian traditions, I'll be using a lot of Christian examples. For example, in the Christian example, you have Hallelujah. That's an example. So another one, Amen. In the Orthodox tradition, it is normally said Amen. But the European and the English has kind of shortened it to Amen, and it kind of lost its strength, because every sound, every word is supposed to create its influence on mind and body. So when you say it, when you make it more convenient, it is using its spiritual and energy power. So ultimately, the purpose of saying that word, repeating that word in the mind, silently or loud, openly, is to transcend mind. The person, the self, to help the self to transcend the influence of the mind, transcend the mind itself, and go beyond the mind. So the other part is what we call the yantra. So let's think about what is yantra. As the word says, yantra. So again, you can call it control tool or something for energizing the yantra. Yantra. What's yantra? Yantra is, it can be translated to device or a vehicle, because yan is vehicle. So it is something you use, a space or a device or a tool that you use for the passage to the next phase. So what does that tool look like? A temple is a yantra, a home, a workplace, the body itself, the farms, the earth, the universe. These are all yantras. So what you see in the picture is what we call the Maha Mrityunjay mantra. Sorry, the Maha Mrityunjay yantra. You'll see that the words in there says Om Namah Shivaya, because the mantra, you have a space there. In the space, you have to go on repeating the mantra. So that way, in the end, you feel you'll be transcending the space. So the mantra, you repeat the mantra and perform certain rituals in a space, and then you transcend the space. Then we come into the Tantra part. Tantra is what we call the technique, Tantra. So it's a technique, so it's for the body. So it's a set of rituals that include mantra and yantra. You say the mantra and the yantra together in a space, and then you keep doing it over and over again, then you're able to transcend the body. And if I go much more precise, if I say much more precise, we are transcending the sound. That you start the mantra with the intent to transcend the mind. You start the yantra with the intent to transcend the space. When you do the tantra, you are transcending the body itself. The students of philosophy, the 5 koshas. So as we go deeper, you are transcending all the bodies. That's when you practice the tantra. So there are, what's all this involved? Again, how you practice all this, the mantra, yantra, and the tantra. So they are all used in many paths to divine. In the school, we know about we have 3 courses, the way of action, the way of knowledge, the way of devotion. So way of action is none other than the karma marga from Bhagavad Gita. Way of knowledge is the jnana marga in the Bhagavad Gita, and the way of devotion is the bhakti marga in the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, there are other 15 ways in Bhagavad Gita. So the way of action, which is karma marga, and keep doing what you're doing until you transcend your body and awake, you experience that bliss. The way of knowledge is when you go on searching for the knowledge until you know your own self. As the Upanishad says, know the knower who knows everything, without knowing whom you know nothing. I'll repeat that again. Know the knower who knows everything, without knowing whom you know nothing. So that's the ultimate knowledge. The way of devotion is the bhakti marga. You live a life of devotion to the god or goddess or the saint you believe. In all these processes, there are mantra, yantra, and tantras in all the action. They all vary. There are hundreds or some thousands of them, because every every belief, every tradition, they all have its own mantras, yantras, and tantras. Coming to the gods itself, you will see that what you see in the picture is an image, is a depiction, an artist impression of the sun god. The sun god coming on a chariot drawn by 7 horses. I mean, when you think about this, the number 7. I mean, it's quite interesting to think that 7 is the 7 colors of the rainbow. The 7 horses drawing a chariot for the sun to go around Earth. So originally they are all coming from the Vedic gods. The sun was the most important god in the Vedas, and there was many other gods. And then as the Brahmanical Hinduism later on spread, the Brahmanical Hinduism absorbed a lot of Hindu local saints into the Hindu pantheon as the incarnations, as the blessed, as the people who are blessed by the ultimate gods. The Christian gods, Christianity believes in monotheism, the ultimate God, and there are saints who lived on earth and they were blessed and they had special place in heaven. Muslims believe in Muslims believe in monotheism, the ultimate God Allah, and then of course there are saints who have been had a very saintly life, and they are also respected and worshipped. Then we have the places of worship. So what's a place of worship? It is what I call the yantra. So what is special about the places of worship? The places of worship, they are all located. I mean, the ancient times, the olden days, these were all located on the hills or in the valleys. But as the people spread everywhere, farming and started living everywhere, they all started their own place of worshiping everywhere. So now it is everywhere. But if you look back at the old place of worship, you will find them mostly in hills or in the valleys. Of course, the gods in the hills are tribal gods who lived in the hills, and they protected their people from the enemies in their area. It may be animals, it may be the other tribes. And similarly in the valleys too, the gods in the valleys have connection with the farms. The people needed protection from other enemy kingdoms or forces of nature. So what you see in those places of worship is consecrated statues. The statues are built by humans, but by praying, by reciting mantras, it is believed that the god is going to come and live in that statue. So that's what is called consecrated statue in the Hindu. In the Sanskrit, it's called murti. What you see in the picture is a worship is in a Christian church. Again, you'll see it's a place of worship. Sometimes it is done by a single priest or a group of priests. Again, remember the mantra, yantra, and the tantra. There are many ways to do it. You can do it individually, collectively, or as a large gathering. So it is done either one-on-one with God or collectively. An individual can go to the church or any place of worship and pray to God on a one-on-one basis, or people can come together and follow a written script where they all do the same thing. Then when people come together collectively, there are celebrations. There's a sermon by the chief priest, the head priest of that celebration. People bring offerings. Offerings may be these days is money, but olden days it was all farm producers. and in the end, they're getting the blessings and from the head priest, and they enjoy the bliss after attending that celebration. Then there are daily worships. So the daily worships again involve those two, the mantra and the yantra, and sometimes the tantra too. So these are the prayers at home. They pray in the morning and the evening mostly. It is important that people to pray to their God in the morning before they go to work, and for protection for themselves and protection of the family that they leave behind. And in the evening, when they come back from work, and they must offer thanks to their God because they have been protected, and they had their venture in the day was fruitful, and they were able to accomplish what they did. And during the day, their family left behind were protected, and thanks to that God. What you see in the picture is the rosary, the prayers to Virgin Mary, followed by the most of the Christian traditions. What's interesting is that you see the beads, because that's where you have to you stop at each bead and say Hail Mary. It's interesting, you'll see 54 beads on that Hail Mary. The 54 happens to be half of 108. 108 is a very special number in the Hindu, Jaina, and Buddhist traditions, because you have to repeat a mantra 108 times to experience bliss. And when it comes to rituals, repeat the ritual 108 times. Anything you do, repeat 108 times to get the full benefit. Now, it's also interesting, the religions reduced these things into number of beads, but the philosophers, the thinkers of these traditions, they say the Sanatana Dharma, the Oriental philosophy, it was not about the beads, it was about the thread itself. As we know the word sutra, something that sews things together. So it's a thread that was sewing things together. So thread is nothing other than time. So again, think about that time element. All the ancient traditions have a serpent in their beliefs. A serpent without a beginning and without an end. The serpent is the one carries the time. Serpent is none other than the time itself. That's another subject for another day. So let's keep going with the Kerala example. So then there are special occasions in the lives of people. So what you see in the picture is a baptism of a baby. They believe, the Christians believe that the baby is born as a sinner, because if the baby is not baptized, the baby cannot go to heaven. So the baby must be baptized and accept Jesus Christ as the God. So since the baby doesn't understand what is going on, somebody else, the godparents, will make a promise to God that we will look after the child, we'll bring up the child in the Christian faith. And then on that day, God gives blessings to the baby, and the God is accepted as a Christian, and is believed because since the priest is performing that sacrament on that day, priest is performing sacrament as an agent of God Almighty. And everyone at that moment surrendered to God. And there are different stages of life where the birth is an occasion. Then there are stages at every age, ages of 3, 7, 10, then teenagers, marriage, then death itself. These are all different stages for people to remind themselves, I'm going through a stage, I am passing a stage, I must remind first, thank God for protecting me until this time, and then stay with me, protect me in my future ventures too. Then coming to the next part itself. So the next part is about the seasons. So we all know about the festivals. There are festivals after festivals in all over the world. But what is the speciality? How these festival dates are fixed? The belief, the religions use the term that these festivals are fixed to the dates of the lives of gods or goddesses or saints. But is that really true? I think it is important that we look closely at the dates and how they are tied to the seasons. So what you see in the picture is the 4 seasons, and then the zodiacs, the 12 months in the Julian calendar. There are hundreds of calendars all over the world. The sun calendars, the moon calendars, they all decide how the things go, what are the the movement of the sun and movement. And those months decide the seasons. The rainy season, the summer, and that decides the farming season too. The farming, the harvest, and that is intricately tied to the lives of people. So they kind of fix the festivals to the seasons and to the harvest. So when we talk about Kerala, you will see in the picture that the Kerala had two distinct weather patterns. One was the season after the when the sun crosses into the northern hemisphere after the equinox, the March equinox. Then the weather changes. The wind starts blowing from the southwest to the northeast, and it brings moisture, and the subcontinent starts getting rains. And then when the sun crosses the equator and moves to the south after the September equinox, the weather pattern changes. The wind starts blowing to the southwest, and that brings moisture from the Bay of Bengal into the southern part of the peninsula, and that brings more moisture and rain. That also is another farming season. So these farming seasons, of course, they are all tied to the festivals in the southwest, and of course in the northwest. So that's why you'll see that there are, for the same purpose, you will find different festivals in different parts of the country for different dates. One may wonder if the gods had a birthday or something, or a special day in the life of a god. Why is it not same in different traditions? So the answer is they are tied to the weather changes and the harvest season, harvest times in the seasons. So let's talk a little more about the festivals. So the New Year celebrations in the South. Now, to understand the New Year celebration, I think let's think about the New Year celebration, Christmas itself. Christmas is a New Year celebration in the Northern Hemisphere in the cold climate area, because people in the cold climate area, they saw the sun going away and away and away from them until the sun reached the winter solstice for the people in the Northern Hemisphere, which was on December 23rd. Then the sun rises back, and December 24 happens to be the first day in the new year, and December 25 is a celebration day. That coincide, is that a coincidence, or is it someone decided to use that date as the birthday of Jesus Christ? These are all subjects of argument. I don't think anyone would be really keen to get into an argument, because it is possible to have that argument both ways. And as the sun moves into the north and sun transition into the north, As I said earlier, it brings wherever the sun moves, that's where the weather gets warmer, and that's where the moisture arrives. That's where the wind blows, and that's where the rain falls. That's where the plants grow, and after that time when the sun is at its peak in that area, it is harvest season. And it's interesting that, as I said earlier, there's about over 30 New Year celebrations across India. Now, one may wonder why people use the sun calendars in some places and moon calendars in some places. Again, these are all subjects that is part of many theories. The sun calendar probably mostly is used by people in the northern hemisphere in the cold climate places, because for them it was very easy to see the movement of sun clearly. But for the people in the tropics, the sun's movement was not that clear, but for them it was very easy to identify and mark the movement of moon and how the moon moved from each zodiac to from zodiac to zodiac. That way they kind of fix the celebration mostly on the moon calendar, and the people in the cold climate places fix their celebrations on the sun calendar. So you looking at a few New Year examples in Kerala. One is what we call the end of Mandalam, which is the mid-December, coinciding the winter solstice and coinciding with the Christmas. The dates slightly vary because one is on the sun calendar and one is on the lunar calendar. The end of Mandalam is when there's a big pilgrimage to a temple in the hills, and people have been taking 40 days of fasting and preparing and before going to that place. And then after 40 days of prayers and fasting, when they go to that place, what they experience is bliss. So again, remember the words mantra, yantra, and tantra. So you are going there, you do all you're praying them, you're saying your prayers, the mantra, then you're doing a lot of daily rituals, the yantra and the tantra, and ultimately the ultimate tantra on the final day when you walk all the way up to that temple and offer your prayers. That's when you will experience that bliss. Second one is the Magaram 1, which is another new year, mid-January. It is a kind of coinciding with the sun's transition into the Capricorn zodiac. It also coincides with the Epiphany celebration. So this is another celebration, and there are after that coming into the months of March and April. These are all goddess celebrations, goddess festivals, because the harvests are done, the ground is dry. Now it is hot summer. Everyone is waiting for the rains to arrive, and then that's the time to take care of the soil, clean up, tidy up, and make offerings to the goddesses. And then when the rain arrives by about April, May, then they're ready to harvest. And the rains are always considered as blessings of God. And then with the rain comes the Vishu festival, the mid-April. This is the sun's transition into the Aries zodiac, and it coincides with Easter too. And this is when the first rains are falling, the farming season begins. Thank you, God, celebration time. And this is the time celebrate with all the things they had in stock, and make food with all the things you had, because the new season is beginning, new harvest is happening. You can have a celebration by making a lot of good food with whatever you had in store at that time, until that time. Another important festival to remember is the Onam celebration. This happens in mid-August. This is when the sun transitions to Leo zodiac. After the sun has been to the summer solstice on June 23, on its way back, when it transitioned on the way back to the south, when it transitioned into the Leo zodiac. That's when the new year begins. It coincides with the Virgin Mary Assumption Day. So what you see in the picture is the feast of Onam celebration. You will see that there are lots of dishes on the banana leaf. What you see on the picture is about only 24 dishes. So the 24 is kind of these days average, but in the full meal had 64 dishes. I'll repeat the word 64. 64 dishes in a meal. Can you imagine that? Nowadays, there are not many people who knows to make 64 dishes in a meal, and not many people who knows how to eat 64 dishes because there's an order. Again, I'll go back to the three words: mantra, yantra, and tantra. There's an order. It's a ritual. If you do it in the proper order, you are going to be happy. Your body is going to absorb the food is going to digest well. If you eat them in the wrong order, it's not going to go well. It's not going to digest well. You are not going to experience bliss. So what you see in the picture is a special celebration in a temple. I'll be repeating the words mantra, yantra, and tantra again. So what you see in the picture is an oracle walking on fire. So how is a person able to walk on fire? So we have to think about how that person get ready. There is a long period of fasting and prayers and rituals. Of course, mantra and yantra and tantra, these are all practices for a long period of time. And that makes him confident on that day or when the day arrives to walk on the fire. The person transforms. The person, you might think the person believes he's going to be protected by God. That's not what happened. The person believes he is God himself. So this is where the Advaita comes in. I am God. I am not different from God. I am God. So after you have practiced mantra and yantra and tantra, so on that moment when the person transforms into God, so there's a lot of such miracles, but it's an arduous journey, and whoever can do that can achieve that feat. If you religiously, I would use the word religiously because religions encourage it, religion practice it, but most people doesn't know what it is. It's important to know that on that day the person must become God, not to assume he's going to get blessings, but to believe he is God. So coming to the festivals itself, what you see in the picture is a festival. It's a Christian festival. So it's interesting, if you look at any festival from with an eagle's eye view from outside with an open mind, you'll see they are all celebrated in the same way. Three elements: the mantra, the yantra, and the tantra. What you see in the picture is a Christian festival. The consecrated statue of a saint is taken around and given offerings, and the people pray to that statue and believe the saint is coming to their place, coming to giving them darshan. The people are able to see the saint, and they are going to be blessed by seeing that image. So what you see in the picture is a Hindu festival. It looks the same as any other festival. Wherever you go, any festival, they all look same. There is this deity that is taken around. There are people offering prayers. The language varies, the rituals varies, but at the core, it's all the same thing: mantra, yantra, and tantra. What you see is in the picture is another big festival, one of the biggest festivals in Kerala. Millions of people come together and celebrate many days of celebrations. There's something for everyone, not only the devotees, the people who are practicing the action, the people who are coming to learn the knowledge the devotion, the karma marga, the jnana marga, and the bhakti marga. And there's everybody else. There are people who are working, selling things, uh, entertaining people. You'll find everyone. They are all having a wonderful time. They are all enjoying the day. They are all experiencing bliss. And then we have the pilgrimages. People go on pilgrimages. What you see in the picture is someone starting the pilgrim journey. It's a 40-day fasting journey. I mean, I'll repeat the word, the 40, because you will find that common thread again in almost all religions. 40 days of fasting, 40 days of abstinence, 40 days of special diet, 40 days of special rituals. Those who are familiar with the lives of Jesus Christ, after Jesus Christ was baptized, after the day of Epiphany, he went into the bushes for 40 days of fasting. So the 40 days is actually coming from the Ayurvedic belief that anything in the body takes 40 days to be fully cleaned. But eating a food today, it takes 40 days to be fully removed all the remnants of the residues of that food, after fully digested and removed. So anything in the body must be removed. So 40-day, you set a day for going to the pilgrim center. You start the journey 40 days early, because when you go to the pilgrim center on the 40th day, you are pure. There is nothing that's going to affect you stop you from experiencing the God at that place of pilgrimage. So what you see in the picture is a group of pilgrims going to the Christian pilgrim center. They are carrying the cross. It's a penance, because that's a ritual. That way they are putting themselves through a lot of tradition, a lot of hardships. They are purifying their body, getting rid of their action, putting their sins, and then over to the pilgrim center, and then pray to the God they believe, and they experience bliss on that day. The last part is the life after death. All religions have the very similar practices when it comes to life after death. So there are many ways to do it. The burial, Christians and Muslims do bury the body at a place near or attached to the place of worship, because they are offering the body into the hands of the God, so that the body is taken care of. The deceased, the dead, is going to get a passage to heaven. Some traditions, like the Hindu tradition, is about cremating, burning the whole body, and not only the body, everything that the person used must be burned, so that the person is completely freed from the person's attachment to the world, and then the person is able to go to travel to heaven without any attachments. So for the living, the family members, it is time to remember the dead and pray for the dead. Pray to the God that the dead be accepted into heaven, because the dead is going to take a few days, or sometime in the Hindu belief it is an year. It will take long time to complete that travel. During that time, the soul needs support from the people living on earth. It's also for the purpose of purifying the living from the effects of death, because death releases a soul into the atmosphere, and the living needs to be free from the influence of that soul, and the living must not let the souls to stay on earth. The soul must return to the heaven, to the God where it originally came from. Again, interestingly, you will see the 40-day tradition in almost all religions. 40 days of prayers by the living for the soul of the dead. So you will see the same example as I said earlier. 40 days an important time. It is coming from the Ayurvedic belief that anything that goes in needs 40 days for for its removal completely from the surroundings. So what you see in the picture is the annual offering by the living for the dead souls. There are certain prayers to be performed on certain day, auspicious day of the calendar, and come to the prayers and make special offerings for the soul, so that the soul live in peace with the God. So so and this is also a reminder for the living that be prepared. If you do it for your parents, your children, your grandchildren will do it for you too when you are dead. So what's important here is there's a lot of common threads here. Regardless of whether you follow a religion or no religion, the practices are very similar. You may be someone who is going to a place of worship, or you don't go to a place of worship, but you still do a lot of things that is common in the religious traditions. And you may be doing a ritual that is a religious a ritual that is that's offered and encouraged by a religious tradition, or you may not be practicing a ritual regardless, but there is something you're doing. There is a belief that you have to follow certain things for your spiritual awakening. So the truth is that we are not aware of the spiritual significance of the things we do in our day-to-day life. So like these things. So see the pictures here. One is an orchestra. So let me bring back to those three words I have been saying many times in this presentation: mantra, yantra, and tantra. Mantra is the sound, the word, the singing, or the sounds coming from the instruments. The instruments are the yantra, the space, the yantra. Then they're all performing together. So when they're all performing together, in the end, they're experiencing bliss. The performers experiencing bliss. The way of action, they have done an action and they are experiencing bliss from the action. And the people who are in the hall listening and watching, and they are the devotees, they are experiencing bliss from their devotion to the music, devotion, worship, and respect to the people who are performing. And same thing on the New Year celebration. The New Year celebration is there. People come together, gather. There's a lot of things to do. They all leave all their worries behind on that day. They are celebrating, and they're celebrating, enjoying the day, and experiencing bliss in the end. And then comes to the celebratory worship. I think it's important that we mention ancient tradition. They all had gods and saints and goddesses in their beliefs, in their day-to-day life, in their celebrations. But then Marxism really removed these gods and goddesses from our day-to-day lives. But then people felt a vacuum. So then what happened? They put celebrities in that space, and the celebrities became gods. Otherwise, why would 100,000 people go to a Melbourne cricket ground to watch a musician? Because they have put a celebrity in place where they had gods in the past, or the sportsmen for that matter. I think that concludes my my presentation. It is time for any questions. I stop sharing my my presentation and stop recording.